From the Mixified, well, actually, it's not from Mixified Media, from the Pasadena Media Studios. This is Mixified Media's Around Midnight Somewhere with the Local Boys. I am Joe Carbonetta. I am joined by Todd Fluker. And I have all the way Skyping in from Colorado, Chevelle Divine. It is Thursday, November 14, 2019.
Chevelle, we're on.
How you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good. I'm actually paying attention. I don't know what Chevelle's doing.
What is Chevelle doing back there?
BSing around.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You doing cosplay or something? You cutting up some foam?
I'm crafting.
Yeah, that's...
Did he say crafting or
yeah.
or did he say something else?
Crapping. Yeah, he said crapping.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And that's what's good, Playboy? You just gonna craft in the middle of our show?
Yeah,
Apparently.
that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's better than the alternative.
Yeah. Okay. Now that you're done there, I hope you washed your hands. Anyway, again, this is Thursday, November 14, 2019. We are live tonight. If you'd like to join in on our conversation, you can give us a call anytime, 951-356-6882. That's 951-356-6882 to join the conversation right here on Around Midnight Somewhere. You can also get in on the YouTube chat. CJ, do we have a Facebook chat going tonight too?
I mean, if people want to, but they're gonna have to watch it on YouTube. The YouTube link is posted on Facebook, though.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Yeah. So really, you want to join the YouTube chat? You can always send us a tweet at Joe Carbonetta, at Chevelle Divine, at Todd Fluker. We don't necessarily check those in real time during the show, but hey, anytime you want to reach out and say hello, send us a tweet.
I should probably check that once in a while, huh?
Yeah, not so coincidentally.
Someone should.
As I mentioned at the top of this, we are coming to you from the studios of Pasadena Media. As a matter of fact, we're coming to you from Podcast B Studio. Wow, we actually have a telephone call coming in, and I haven't even finished the intro. All right, I tell you what.
Yeah, but we are like 3 minutes into the hour, and you're still introducing the show. Come on, guy, get it together.
All right, let's take this telephone call.
Yeah, before they hang up.
Hey, this is Around Midnight Somewhere with the Local Boys. Thank you for calling. You are on the air. Who are we talking to tonight? Now's the time where you talk.
Sorry to call anytime. Is this a good time?
This is anytime,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I guess so. I did say call anytime. Who are we talking to tonight?
Tracy.
Tracy, how are you doing?
We haven't even started a fight yet. It's a little early in the show.
Yeah,
I don't even know why you were picking on him. I enjoyed the crafting, Chevelle. What are you making?
You did you not hear the toilet flush? Don't ask him what he's making.
I was actually, I was making shock absorbers for my microphone so that I can bang on the table and it won't be quite so loud.
I'm sorry, you're gonna shock absorb for what? And you're gonna do what kind of banging?
Watch, like if I do this, that's like loud, right?
Hey, look, I don't need to know where you're banging.
Yeah, don't do that again. I think you just broke your phone.
Yeah, go easy, bro.
Why don't you just use a ribbon mic?
Hey, it's winter time. This is crafting season, man. Do you know how much stuff? Actually, it's fall, but that's also a good crafting season.
Chevelle always says it's a good crapping
creativity.
season. Chevelle craps all year round.
Yeah, I do craft all year round.
Well, anyway,
you can't laugh and then do the laugh track after the fact, Joe.
Why not?
Kind of a cop out, man. No, you gotta hit him.
Anyway, I
appropriate time.
appreciate Tracy calling in and interrupting Joe's 10-minute intro. Joe, seriously, how long was that intro gonna go?
I was about to say that if you want to make your own TV show, you can give us a call Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the following number, 626-794-8585. That's 626-794-8585. And you too can come down and make your own show, and it's cheap.
Cheap. Come on, Tracy, where were you?
Yeah, Tracy, you're supposed to say cheap.
Very cheap. Very cheap.
We are cheap.
All
Anyway,
right.
Cheap.
I don't know if I like the way that sounded.
Tracy, what's your deal?
I think I'm a little put off.
What are you up to this weekend?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, you, Tracy.
Yes, you.
I got some skydiving planned.
Ooh.
Skydiving plans. I hope they include the use of a
Yeah.
parachute.
They do, actually.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm
Glad to
gonna
hear that.
try some new parachutes out. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a
So-
thing. People
Expand
try
my
out new
skills.
parachutes.
Yes,
Hey.
they do.
Are you like certified in that now? Do you not have to go like strapped to some strange man?
Why you got to be a man? How about
I
I'm
am
sure there
very
are female
certified.
parachuting instructors.
Let's
They
not get carried
are,
away, Joe.
actually, and I think in a couple years I might join them
Would you trust one?
to be a female
Everyone
parachute
except Tracy.
instructor.
How many jumps
What?
do you have
guys
to
don't
do?
trust me?
How many jumps do you have to do to be certified?
Tracy, considering you seem to live to call and
Harass.
basically harass
Harangue.
and prove wrong anything I say, no, I really wouldn't trust you to not drop me.
So to become an instructor, you have to have 500 jumps. I'm a little
Wow.
over halfway there.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of drops.
Yeah, that's a lot of jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. I don't know what.
What drew you to this, Tracy?
They're not perfectly good.
Is your life
They're
not
very
interesting
scary.
enough?
The plane.
No, I think
No, I lead such a boring life. I needed more.
it was the
Adrenaline.
Boeing MD-80 that actually decided, or was it which is that one that kept having all the problems and was almost on the verge of crashing like a half dozen times?
The Flying Fortress.
Wasn't no. No, it was a recent. Wasn't that the MD-80 or
The Millennium Falcon.
Oh. Yeah. Anyway, that plane that's been grounded for some time now.
Supermax you're talking about.
Oh, the
Boeing
Supermax. You are right. The Supermax. That's what got her to decide that she should really learn about jumping out of airplanes.
The Enterprise.
Ugh.
Yeah?
No.
The Firefly.
Yeah.
I am a leaf on the wind.
Did he
Never
say he
mind,
was
you were
breaking wind? What was that?
There's a lot of action going on in his part of the studio. I've never been so glad he was on Skype.
You know, seriously, he's 2 states over. He can break all the wind he wants, and we don't know anything about it.
I've been lighting it up pretty good. I got to tell you, I scared myself earlier. It was-
Every so often, you'll see. If you notice to the
Sorry.
right of the screen, there are actually these wooden blinds, and he is passing gas with such intensity that even those are swaying in the breeze.
They're like singed at the bottom.
That's right. They
Yeah,
didn't
they
start
kinda
out
are,
that dark brown color.
Oh, that poor
Wow.
that poor
That's a
plant
lot.
in the background.
Oh.
it's also turning brown.
It's supposed to purify the air, and it's losing the fight. Well, Tracy, we really appreciate your call tonight. I hope you're going to stay watching the show so that maybe you can call us back in a while and tell me what I've said wrong when we introduce the first topic.
Sounds great.
Oh, I was about to introduce the crickets again. I thought she was not going to respond
Wait,
to
Tracy, I wanna know more about your death-defying lifestyle. So
Oh,
do you
all right.
do you ride your motorcycle to on your way to
I
jump
so-
out of planes?
I can, yes.
that. I would like to know if she has actually ever ridden the motorcycle out of the aircraft with the parachute strapped on and then jettisoned the cycle and parachuted down.
Come on, that's got to be something from a Mission Impossible movie. I can see Tom Cruise totally
I'm sure
doing that.
Someone's done something like that.
Yeah, you should
I'll
do
look
that.
into it for you guys.
She
Well,
just
they-
doesn't feel like
I'll see if I
wasting a
can find
perfectly
it
good
out.
motorcycle. She'd rather jump out of the airplane but not trash the motorcycle.
She's like, Chevelle, can I borrow your
Yeah.
motorcycle?
Exactly.
Oh.
No.
I have a new life
No.
goal. I want to go as fast in the air as I've went on land.
Huh.
Okay. How fast
So
is that?
my
See, now
goal
I'm
right now
curious.
is So how fast if I went in the air, or how fast if I went on land?
Let's do both. Surprise me.
On land, timed only 167.
Only.
In the air, I went a little over 220.
Well, wait. So what you mean is you want to go as fast on land as you've gone in the air?
No, actually, I'd like them to meet. But my goal is 280.
Is terminal velocity?
280 miles an hour.
No, that's
gosh.
faster than terminal.
So,
Terminal's only like 165.
so you're looking for a rocket-propelled bike, is basically what you're talking about.
Well, we put a turbo on it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think to get to
What
280,
what
you're
bike
gonna.
did you put a turbo on?
My bike,
What kind of bike is that?
Schwinn.
an R6, a Yamaha R6.
A Yamaha R6 with turbo on it.
Huffy.
Why not just get the H2 or something? That's woo. Huffy, shut up. Todd.
The H2R, I've actually,
No, Huffy
I know
ever
the
got
guy
to
that rides
280
it.
miles an hour.
And that's supercharged. It's not turboed.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Now we're really
I
getting
stand corrected.
we're getting into the nuts and bolts. It's become boring.
Yeah, it has.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'll call you back after you introduce the first topic.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for your call, Tracy. You have a great night, okay?
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right. So,
When the caller says that this is getting boring, that's really the problem. Like, yeah, I'm boring myself being bored with you guys. That's
Yeah,
terrible.
I guess.
yeah, I would almost say that hurt, but actually that's probably the nicest thing that Tracy's ever said to me, is that she was just getting bored with the conversation. So I guess I'm going to leave that one alone for the evening. But all right. So on to more serious topics, and we've been jovial up till now, but if you guys were anything other than living under a rock this morning, you could not escape the wall-to-wall news coverage of the most recent school shooting. I'm sure you guys all heard about this, saw this, got
Nope.
some kind of information. No?
Nope.
Oh, all the way
Nope.
over in Colorado, you're completely detached
I
from things
saw
that
a
go on in California.
headline, but
Well, for those of you who aren't aware, we had an active shooter on a campus at Saugus High School in Santa Clarita this morning. The reports that came in at the time and have since been confirmed was that it was a 15/16-year-old boy. And here's why I say that is because today, the day that he picked to commit this heinous act, was his 16th birthday. So he actually turned 16 years old this morning and decided his birthday gift to himself would be to make other people as miserable as apparently he was. And so he proceeded to go to school and dressed in all black, as the reports go. And by the way, I don't know if at this time, because I was not able to continue watching the news as we were preparing for the show this evening, but there were preliminary reports coming out earlier this evening that the 16-year-old had been identified as a Nathaniel Burhow. In any event, he went to school all dressed in black, and once in the campus and in the quad area where all the students were basically hanging out waiting for school to begin because the first bell had not rung yet, he proceeded to produce from his backpack a .45 caliber handgun and began to open fire. In the resulting melee, he struck 5 students, all between the ages of 14 and 16 years of age. And it was later revealed that apparently he must have known how many rounds he had. He reserved the last bullet for himself. So after shooting 5 other students, he then proceeded to shoot himself in the head, but ironically did not kill himself straight out, which apparently was his intention.
Wow.
Unfortunately, in the aftermath of this, multiple victims were transported to the hospital. Of course, the school went on immediate lockdown, and everybody was to shelter in place. Parents became, terrified as the reports were coming out. Nobody knew who had been hit, who was involved, how serious the situation was. Several victims were transported to the hospital. Of those victims, 2 did not survive. A 16-year-old girl was the first to succumb to her injuries, and a 14-year-old boy was the second. The third death, which was being reported as of about 5 o'clock this evening, was the shooter himself, who finally succumbed to his head injuries. And there were 2 girls that were wounded and a 14-year-old boy. 14 and 15-year-old girls that were moderately injured and a 14-year-old boy. All those 3 are expected to recover. So a very tragic situation that took place this morning. And again, unless you were under a rock, there's no way you could have missed it, because there was wall-to-wall coverage on just about every television station and every radio station at least some point during the day. Here's what I found to be most interesting about this situation is that the shooter, and this is terrifying, by the way, this shooter did not fit the standard baseline profile for a person that would be expected to commit this kind of act. He was not a loner. He did have friends. He actually had a girlfriend. So it wasn't one of these situations where he was angry at women because he was constantly being rejected. He actually did have a girlfriend. He actually did have friends. He was not, by most accounts, an antisocial person. He wasn't the most social person in the world, but he was not an antisocial person. Not a complete introvert. He didn't have any specific enemies that preliminary reports were able to uncover. He did not have a poor relationship with his mother. It does turn out that his father passed away a couple of years ago. But again, it's not like he was estranged from his mother. So it's very strange. And there were no, at least to this point, they were attempting to dig into his social media accounts, and with the expectation of finding some kind of anti something behavior, rants against a certain class or group or whatever. They didn't find any of that.
Yeah, no manifesto.
No, nothing
released. Nothing
that suggested that he would be interested in doing something like this, which is a very, very terrifying thought, because how do you stop someone who shows no outward signs of intending, of being in such a dark place, much less intending to commit such an act?
I mean, it kind of shows the kind of reach that this kind of behavior has gotten to. Like, that makes me wonder if he had any kind of idolization for the previous shooters. Like, he obviously planned this out, and it was some kind of celebration for him that it was on his birthday that he decided to just lay waste to his own school. And I know this morning I started to hear about it like first thing, and actually a coworker of mine apparently was from that part of town and went to that school. So she was all freaked out this morning and she was on her phone trying to call, and she said she was still friends with some of the teachers there, and she was very concerned about their safety. But, I guess that's the only good thing. I don't know if you can even call it a silver lining, but this guy didn't come very prepared. He only had one weapon, and apparently wasn't prepared to reload and continue his reign of terror. He decided to take himself out of the equation very quickly.
Yeah, which leads to another interesting set of circumstances, something else that requires analyzing. The people that were hit, were they specifically targeted, or were they targets of convenience just because they were close by? You mentioned that he didn't seem to come very well prepared. And again, this is very early on. The events took place this morning. There's a lot of investigating that's going to be going on since, that point, and probably weeks into the future. One of the things that the preliminary report suggests, again, is that he did lose his father December I think the date was December 27 of 2017. So he's been gone about a year, and we're approaching the 2-year mark, as a matter of fact. His father was evidently a hunter and a bit of an alcoholic, are some of the preliminary reports. But the father owned several weapons. The assumption at this point is that the shooter got a hold of at least one of those weapons. That's the expectation at this point, because again, you can't at 15, 16 years of age, you can't go out and purchase one of these weapons. Looks like we got another telephone call. Let's see who we're talking to. You have reached around midnight somewhere with the local boys. I am Joe Carbonetto. Who are we talking to tonight? You are on the air.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you tonight?
Doing just fine.
Great.
What's the conversation for tonight?
Who am I talking to?
Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson. Okay. We didn't actually need a last name, but Michael, it's a pleasure to speak with you this evening. We are discussing the events that took place earlier this morning, the school shooting, which happened at Saugus High School in Santa Clarita. Rather serious topic. One we don't, it's a very, very heavy topic, and so generally we tend to err on the lighter side of things, but unfortunately the events that took place this morning are a little too important, too big, too far-reaching for us to ignore. So, were you aware of the events that took place this morning?
I just got bits and pieces this morning over the radio that one girl was shot, killed, and 5 injured. Maybe?
Well, no. Unfortunately, there were 2 fatalities, not including the perpetrator himself, who ultimately took his own life. But a 16-year-old girl was killed, and a 14-year-old boy. Both succumbed to their injuries at a local hospital shortly after being transported in the aftermath of the events.
Wow, such a tragedy.
Yes, most definitely. And there were...
we have more and more shootings like this. There's more and more shootings like this nationwide. It's pretty common. Is it like mental illness, or what's going on with our students?
Yeah, all too common it's become these days. It's very sad that... this story seems to be getting, quite a bit of attention, because I don't know, this sort of thing doesn't happen as much here in California, I think. I don't know. Why is this one, it feels like it's getting a lot more attention, or maybe it's just because it's local that the local news is covering it more than I feel like I've seen about, shootings in other states.
I think you both have touched on something that's rather important. It does seem to be happening more and more frequently. And I think as the frequency continues to elevate, it is gaining more and more attention and becoming a much bigger issue. I think there's another reason that this is becoming such a big issue is it is something of a political hot button. There are an awful lot of people who attribute the current administration with helping to foster the lack of tolerance in society. And that may be one of the reasons that people would point to for this becoming a more common occurrence. But going back to the fact that it is happening more frequently, there were several people who mentioned today in interviews, people that were present or somehow connected to this morning's events, that were saying that there are more of these active shooter type disaster drills on the school campuses now than there are actual earthquakes. Thank you very much for calling, Michael, and we're going to continue the conversation here. Anyway, yeah, that there are more of these active shooter drills than there are disaster drills for natural disasters like earthquakes. That's a frightening prospect. So going back to what we were discussing about the shooter and how he acquired the weapon. Again, at 16 years of age, you cannot walk into and again, he would have had to have done this at 15 because he turned 16 today. At 15 years of age, you cannot walk into any legal establishment and purchase a handgun. You have to be 21. And then there's the waiting period before you can actually take the firearm home. But nobody is going to sell a weapon to a 15-year-old boy, which means he had to have acquired it through some illegal or illicit means.
Well, it sounds like it was a home where guns were not hard to find. If the father, as you say, was a hunter, then I'm sure there were multiple weapons on hand.
Well, that is certainly a possibility.
It's an
assumption that could be
It's
made.
an assumption on our part.
Speaking of which, I don't hear anything from Chevelle. Did we lose the connection to Colorado?
No.
Are you there, Chevelle?
Did you mute yourself? Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
did.
I'm here. I was just letting you do your little monologue there.
I see. Well, now we got another telephone call.
Shut up, Chevelle.
Hey, you have reached around midnight somewhere with the local boys. Thank you for calling. You are live tonight. I'm Joe Carbonetto. Who are we talking to?
You're talking to the man, the one and the only.
Oh,
Oh,
the man.
hi, man.
Hi, man. How are you tonight?
How you doing, bruv?
Yeah, we call him Bo for
Hey,
short.
man, what's happening?
Hey, not much. Are you watching the show this evening? Are you following on our conversation?
Actually, I am not. I actually called up just to say hi, see how you're doing.
Oh.
Wait a minute. It's a Thursday night. That's right. You changed it. Wait a minute. Then I got to bring out the laptop.
Oh, yeah, we are talking about the terrible, tragic events that took place this morning here in the city of Santa Clarita. The active shooter on the school campus at the Saugus High School.
Yeah, my wife just told me about that. You know, it's scary. This kind of stuff is becoming almost a normal thing.
It's happening everywhere, and almost every day. And that's the question: is what can we do?
Yeah, exactly.
The
biggest question is what is precipitating this continual ramp up in this type of violence.
Thank you very much for that. The thing that, okay, not trying to get into a thing over, gun rights, but whenever something like this happens, everyone comes up, starts talking about guns. Hey, we need less guns, we need more guns, whatever. But to me, the question I always ask is, how come nobody says, hey, how come this wasn't happening 3 decades ago?
Exactly.
As a society, why? It's like that's the question never gets asked. So it's nice to see that it's finally being presented.
Here's something that you mentioned that about the gun rights issues. And not to detract from people like Gabrielle Gifford and other people who have been affected by gun violence, but 9 out of 10 times when one of these shootings occurs, the smoke, and forgive me for using this expression because I realize it could be considered in poor taste, but the smoke has barely cleared, and there are already people screaming about how we need to take away everybody's right to have an assault rifle. Well, here's a news flash for you. Taking away everybody's assault rifles would not have stopped this tragedy because this kid did not show up on campus with an assault rifle. He used a .45 caliber handgun and was just as effective as coming in there with some kind of an assault rifle and spraying dozens and dozens of bullets. Oftentimes we hear about these guys that fire off all these shots and don't manage to kill all that many people.
I mean, it's sad to say, but no, I can't say I agree with that statement. He wasn't as effective.
He managed to kill 2 people and wound 3 others in a very, very short period of time. And
actually, I take that back. Considering the number of shots he took,
yeah,
that actually that's some good shooting.
Apparently, he had about 6 rounds in that weapon, and he was I won't say lethal, but he was on target with all 6 of them.
Yeah.
So, taking away assault rifles isn't going to solve this problem. And stripping everybody of their Second Amendment rights is not the solution to this problem either. It is putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue.
Well, I was just thinking about it earlier that I was driving past my local dry cleaner, and it had the dumbest message. They often have like this stupid message of the day on their marquee. It's motivational, something or other. But it said, don't change, live how you're... It was something, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, live your life how you want to live it, and the world will adjust. And I'm like, that's the kind of thing we're feeding people these days. It's your world. We're just living in it. all this BS like that. If a child is fed a constant, diet of, hey, this is your world, we're just living in it, you're the coolest, bro, you do you. Yeah, obviously they're gonna become a narcissist of some kind, and they're gonna, I don't know, it can lead to tragic events like this, I feel like.
Well, and then there's that other thing right now where everybody is a winner. They're nobody ever loses. We're teaching that in school. You're super special. You're very, very important, and everybody has to get a gold star all the time. When unfortunately in life it doesn't really work that way.
It's very interesting you should mention that. I'm going to share with you a brief true story.
Okay.
Okay, I am so bad at basketball. I am famous amongst all my friends from high school. I mean, literally, everyone talks about how bad I am. They're like, man, you're the worst we ever saw. And the more you practice, the worse you got. Okay, well, yet I love the game, which didn't help. True story. Okay, I was a musician and I ran track, and those were the things I was actually good at. One year, I decided I'm going to go out for basketball in high school. So I'm walking in the gym, and the coach is leaning up against the door, and he looks over and he sees me, and he turns back around and does a double take. And he's got a look on his face like, oh, no. And he walks over, and he's like, hey, how you doing, Kevin? Hey. And he puts his arm around me, and he slowly starts walking me away from the gym. He says, hey, let me talk to you, buddy. True story. He says, you're a nice kid. People like you. People like you. They like you. They like the way you play guitar. They like, the way you run track. But, that right there, and he points to the gym. He says, that right there, I don't think that's for you.
That's not for you.
Wow. I don't even think you should go in there. And I remember thinking, oh, really? A word? So I turned around and walked off, and I thought, wow, what a great guy. Well, the reality is he was a great guy, because we had a championship basketball team, and I was about to be looking back, I would have been the laughing stock. It would have been a traumatic moment. Now, today, he would have lost his job for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a lawsuit now. Yeah,
but the reality is, he's a coach. The coaches look around the school. They know who's got skills, and they know who does not. So it's like, that was at a time where you could be honest and it was okay, because it's like, hey, you're not good at this, but you have these other things you're good at, or you should find these other things you're good at. It's like, in life, some people are taller, some people are faster, some people are richer, some people are poor. It sends out, one man's opinion, a bad message to say, hey, everyone gets a trophy. We're all the same.
We're all the same, yeah.
And I think when you prepare kids for that young, I think it makes it a lot easier for them to deal with the real world, because they're going to find out eventually.
But see, now, something else that I was talking about at the outset of the show, one of the things that's very disconcerting, at the very least, to say about this particular situation, is that at least in these preliminary moments of the investigation, they are finding that this perpetrator, this 16-year-old kid, did not fit the profile, the standard recognized profile for someone who is likely to commit this kind of an act. He wasn't a loner. He wasn't shunned by women. He actually had a girlfriend. He seemed to have an outwardly good relationship with his mother. Go ahead, CJ.
Here's what that fact tells you. The bottom line is they have no idea why people do this. They've tied it to bullying. They've tied it to just general antisocial behavior. They've tied it to mental illness. But they're not able to keep up with how fast things are changing. And I think part of what Todd said touches on it. They keep telling kids they can go out and do whatever they want. And then when you add to that the pressures that they put on themselves or their peers put on them through social media, you have no idea what's really going inside of somebody's mind. He might have been wearing a mask for the last 3 years and doing all the things he thought he was supposed to do in order to fit in and do all that, and maybe just reached a point where he just didn't feel like it was worth it anymore and went in there. And we'll never know because he's gone. We can speculate all day, but I find it problematic the way that people are being coddled even into adulthood. And I heard somewhere that, and I think we might have mentioned this, I don't know, but I've heard that the United States government has actually changed the age range for adolescence and extended it into the 30s.
I think
because
I
people are
remember
not
hearing
able to
that.
get their act together until the
Wow,
30s.
that's pretty sad.
So rather than teach people how to get their act together, you're just going to lower the bar.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing for the last half a century in this country. And it's no wonder that you see a lot of the problems that you have. And it's part of it. I'd like to blame, Western culture. I'd like to be able to say it's capitalism, but ultimately, I'm sure that does play a part in it. I think there comes a point where people believe so much in the illusion and they haven't had enough reality. That's something that you're just not going to experience if you're born in like the favelas of Brazil. It's not something you're going to experience if you're born in the slums of Mumbai. It's not even something you're going to experience if you're born in, the hood down in LA, because they're confronted with a very different reality. But when you have these people who have this constant positive stuff being launched at them, you're setting people up for failure. And the sad thing is, I think it has reached such a level where they are expecting so much of themselves and they're being fed a bunch of bull about how great they are when in fact they're not. And teachers know this, but teachers are being told that they have to keep pushing them along no matter what, no matter how hard it is for the teachers, because teachers are having a hard time dealing with this crap. Coaches are being told the same thing, because if you step up and you try to give this kid some reality, you got to deal with these parents who don't want to confront the reality of their own children. Half the time, these parents grew up in that same culture, so they think they can do whatever they want. And it's all a big mess. And I think the thing that really scares me isn't the fact that he doesn't fit the profile. It's the fact that I think we're going to see a lot more people who don't fit that profile, because there's so much hopelessness. When you live your entire life in an illusion, then life doesn't have reality. It doesn't have meaning for you. So it's a lot easier to do something like what he did. I'm not saying that's the case, but I do believe we're going to see a lot more of it.
I think it's a valid theory right there. Unfortunately, right now we have to take a break. Kevin, I don't know if you can stay with us on the phone or if you need to go, but we got to take a break, and we're going to be back in a couple of minutes. You think you can stick around with us, Kevin?
Oh, I got you. Matter of fact, I'm on the laptop right now.
All right, fantastic. Well, you hang on the line, and we'll be back right after this.
Honey, what I think you need is a socket wrench.
I played JV basketball.
I'm sorry. I don't think it looks right.
This is good, and it's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
I'm gonna call my dad.
We need to go meet the guys. I'm lit. Can you drive?
Pool party at Jesse's. Can you drive? Will you drive? I'm a little toasty.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope, I'm high. But I can order us a ride.
Okay.
Friendly reminder, don't drive high. If you feel different, you drive different.
We're all busy, but our health comes first.
I've got this mammogram scheduled. When is your colonoscopy?
Screening increases the chances of detecting certain cancers early, when treatment can be most effective. Make time to schedule your screening appointment now.
Hello, I'm Congressmember Judy Chu. Talk to a doctor about your risk factors to determine what screenings are best for you. Make your appointment today and keep it.
This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
How's everybody doing? We all right? Great job. You guys are doing it.
Tackle football is like smoking. The younger I start, the longer I'm exposed to danger. You wouldn't let me smoke. When should I start tackle? Choose flag under 14.
Honey, what I think you need.
All right, we are back right here. This is Around Midnight Somewhere, coming to you from the Podcast Studio B in Pasadena Media. in the glorious city of Pasadena, where you too can come down, make your own show, and it's cheap. You can give us a call Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 626-794-8585 if you want to learn how to make your own program. And again, it is cheap. And if you want to join our conversation tonight, you can give us a call, 951-356-6882. I know the phone lines are kind of tied up right now, but keep trying, and hopefully you can get through. Kevin, are you still with us this evening?
Oh, I am.
All right, fantastic. We are still talking about the Saugus school shooting that took place this morning in the city of Santa Clarita. And, Chevelle, you were making a very interesting observation about the potential that this could continue. And that leads into the question of, there are two big questions. Is how do you know if an individual is going to do this if they don't fit the profile? And then what can be done to stem this tide that seems to be taking over the country slowly but surely?
Well, I think one of the things Kevin said touches on that directly, and that's you didn't see this kind of thing happening 30, 40, 50 years ago. This just did not happen. Kids had responsibilities. Some of them had actual jobs. They had to help out in their parents' shop, farm, whatever the case may be. They just didn't have that kind of time, and they're living virtual lives. Like their real lives are virtual. Everything they do is tied to a screen. So it creates problems. And we did have Nikki Villalobos commented on the YouTube channel that she hasn't seen reports confirming the shooter's death, but that his condition is grave. So he may be brain dead, but technically might still be alive. I haven't actually looked that up. But
I kind of find that idea
I think
interesting.
he was brain dead before he got into school this morning, but that's.
I don't know if that's fair to say. And I think at some point, like the politician's going to go make this push for gun control. They're going to make this push for safer schools and all this other bullcrap. But what they will not do and have not ever done is try to address directly the issues around mental illness and just around giving people real life skills. Like
I'm not even sure that mental illness is as big a factor in this. I have been on record because we've talked about situations in society for as long as we've been doing this show. And I've been on record for all this time saying that I really think we have now gone so far as a program, probably 2 or 3 generations of people, that the solution when you feel that you aren't getting your way is violence. There's
another solution.
There has been, there has been this terrible experiment over the last 20, 30 years of media in general. And I'm not just talking about social media, but media in general. Listen to popular music these days. Watch any television program or movie where it has to have a gratuitous sex and violence scene in it. We've got first-person shooter video games. And again, I go back to the popular music. There was
don't come for my video games.
There was this wonderful song about a year ago where it was literally a song about school shootings, as near as I can figure, because the lines, I'm going to literally quote the lines that all you other kids with the pumped up kicks, you better run, outrun my gun. You better run faster than my bullet.
No, yeah, that was
This is what we're programming generations of kids with. And then they want to sit there and wonder why some kid grabs his father's, 45 and walks into school and starts shooting up the joint.
Well, I think that promoting violence is one piece of the equation. The other piece of that equation is the press from medicating everybody rather than having people work through issues. You don't have to deal with the issue. Just take this pill and then it'll go away.
You know what?
And now you're running into problems where they're pumped up on drugs and they have anger, and it all is going to come out eventually.
Let me stop you for a second there, CJ. Hey, Kevin, we got a whole bunch of telephone calls coming in, so I'm going to have to free up the line so I can let some more calls come in, if that's all right.
No worries. I'm still tuned in.
All right, well, call us back later, okay?
You got it, brother.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your call. Bye-bye.
Yep.
All right, if you've been trying to call in, the lines are now open, and you can actually call in right now. Our apologies.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, sure.
You keep saying lines, plural.
Well, as you can see, we actually do have 2 lines because we had another telephone call coming in, but I don't want to turn this into a party line here, so we're trying to take one call at a time. Anyway,
is that a possibility?
It is a possibility. We could actually get 2 calls on the line simultaneously, but that would be a big mess. Anyway,
why didn't we do that?
The issue for me, I really do believe that the biggest part of this equation is that we are programming our youth that it is acceptable to resort to violence if things aren't going your way. Like you touched on, Chevelle, or you, Todd, as well. This whole idea that everybody gets a gold star, that we're all number one. You can't, in order for somebody to win, somebody else has to lose. That's just reality. And programming our children in school that everybody's going to be okay does not set them up to deal with reality. In the real world, people end up homeless. And you know what? If anybody's got a justifiable reason to lose their marbles, maybe that's it. After you've worked for 15, 20 years and then had somebody pull the rug out from under you because, your job decides to go in a different direction. And suddenly the degree that you had, 13 or 14 years ago when you started working no longer seems applicable to today's employers. And, you can't feed your kids. You can't save your house. You can't even keep clothes on your back. Those are the people that probably threw their hands up in the air and ended up being homeless in the first place. But a 15-year-old kid walking into school, where do you get that idea?
Well, there's no hope. And if you're going to kick God out of the schools, you got to deal with the devils left behind.
That's an interesting perspective also. So, it is conceivable that this walk away from religion across the years, that's a sticky wicket all of its own. Because you certainly have the people that are highly religious that I'm sure will be right on board with that statement. And then you have the people who are very non-religious who would probably take offense to that. And again, that goes right back to the whole idea that, we can't all be winners. We got another telephone call here. Let's see if we can actually get this one. Hey, you're on Around Midnight Somewhere with the Local Boys. I'm Joe Carbonetta. You are live. Who are we talking to tonight?
This is Nikki. Hi.
Hi, Nikki. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing all right, thank you. What did you call to tell us?
The school shooter stuff.
Okay.
That's what you guys are talking about right now.
Yeah.
Unless you changed while I was watching.
No, we are definitely solidly still on that topic.
Okay.
So please, we were waiting.
There's a little bit of a lag, but it's only about 3 seconds.
Okay,
it's
good.
actually closer to 30. I bumped it.
Shut up, Phil.
Okay, Nikki,
this
go
is
ahead.
a high-class production we're running here.
Would you let Nikki talk?
Hi,
no,
Nikki.
it's okay. I'm familiar with your production. I know what it's like.
I'm very sorry.
This is the part where you talk,
the whole
Nikki.
Idea that I'm talking. The music about
Start
this.
talking,
Kids are
Nikki.
going to sing about what they're dealing with. They're gonna sing about what they're dealing with. So of course there's going to be songs about school shootings. Whether glorifying it isn't great, but that's what they deal with every day. My son has had 2 lockdowns this week just for school fights.
2 lockdowns for school fights.
Yeah, so that's just this week. They're getting locked down all the time.
So does that seem overzealous that they're locking it down for something that seems?
When you in the wake of that boy that was killed after he was ganged up on by 2 other boys that that he'd been being bullied repeatedly for months, and then they punched him in the head, knocked him to the ground where he struck his head and later died. I don't think it's necessarily going too far now to lock down the school in a situation like that.
Yeah, I guess it was like 6 fights one day and 3 fights
deal with
another.
the people left behind.
What was that, CJ?
No, go ahead, Nikki.
No, it's okay.
Well, so Nikki.
No, I'm just saying, okay, let's all talk at the same time. It'll be awesome.
Chevelle, just say what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is, the thing that's going to happen is the focus is going to be taken away from what it was that was bothering this person. No one's going to remember the names of the victims except the ones that were directly impacted in 3 months. I guarantee no one's going to care about it. People probably won't even remember the name of the school, and that is also a problem with how things are done. They have to at some point start to deal with the people that went through this and were left behind and affected by this. But no one ever wants to do that because it's not sensational. It doesn't make good news stories.
Right. So Nikki, you're saying...
I don't disagree with you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But here's the thing is they're only going to... It's not the first one. This is so common now that, it's just going to be the school shooting in California or the El Paso shooting from August. It's not going to be each one stands out because it's so common now.
Yeah.
But so the question really is, what is inspiring all of this desire to resort to violence if your life doesn't seem to be all right? I know the old saying that misery loves company, and it seems that this boy had every intention of taking his own life, but apparently was going to take a few people with him on the way. But my question is, what do we do to stop this? Because I personally believe, and I think Chevelle would agree with me, that this rush to gun control isn't going to solve the problem. This child didn't get a hold of the weapon legally in the first place. So to simply outlaw the weapons is not going to stop people from getting their hands on these things. It was illegal for him to have it now, but that didn't stop him. It was illegal for him to bring it into the school, but that didn't stop him. And certainly committing a murder is illegal, but that didn't stop him. So what we need to find out what is causing these people to sink to such a low place that they feel violence is the only solution. And I'm wondering if you have any insight on that.
No. I think that there's a lot of people that need help and they can't get that help. And part of that is we need more counselors in schools. We need to normalize getting help for mental health. If there's something wrong, you need to be able to talk about it. And that's not happening right now. That's not happening with kids at all.
Okay. All right. I think that's a valid concern.
At some point, I think it coupled with that is you have got to teach people personal responsibility. They cannot live their entire lives as victims. That's not a way to live if you manage to go that long. And at some point, you will reach a breaking point and you will hurt yourself or someone else. You have got to be able to take responsibility for the fact, and then know life sucks.
Well, that goes back to that whole issue that we were talking about, where they're telling everybody you all get a gold star, everybody's perfect, and everybody's great, and we're all number one. It doesn't set people up for reality.
Let's not blame that on all the kids, though. Which generation is doing that? That started, I'm in my 30s. That stuff started with my parents' generation going, well, my kid is special. They get a gold star. And now I'm sitting here telling my kid, no, you need to work hard. You're not just special. You actually need to work for this shit. So it's a generational thing, and there's going to be a delay in getting it.
Kid next door. And you got the kid next door getting away with murder, and your kid's wondering why they can't do it. So, and then they're thinking you're the one that's crazy for telling them they actually have to apply themselves and learn some skills.
And part of that is parents need to have real conversations with their kids. I sit down and I talk to my son, and he gets a real conversation, and he understands why I'm telling him what I'm telling him. It's not like a I'm your friend thing. It's a I'm just going to let you know what's going on thing.
Okay. But certainly you have to also be afraid of the media, that the media in general, that our young minds are being exposed to. Again, all the video games, it seems that all of the popular ones all have to do with committing crimes or worse, violent acts. And it's impossible to find television shows that don't depict some kind of violence, and it's becoming more and more acceptable for that violence to be graphic in every way, shape, or form. I was having a conversation with a coworker just the other day. Going back to the 1980s, we had television shows that I guess could be considered mildly violent. As a perfect example of this, does anybody on the panel remember Alf? No. Does anybody remember A-Team?
Come on, Alf used to eat those
How did
cats.
I know you were going to say the A-Team?
Well, okay, I mean, it's
the
a
one show where they'll fire off 900 rounds and no one ever gets hit.
Exactly, that's the point. Exactly. These guys walked around with fully automatic assault rifles, and they were constantly getting in gun battles, and yet you never actually ever saw anyone get shot up and die on the show. So, yeah, you could make an argument that there was some gratuitous violence in there because there's gunplay. But we didn't have these graphic scenes of blood splurting all over the place and people getting, their heads blown off and that kind of stuff. And yet, you can watch a primetime television show today.
Argument from that.
All right, go ahead.
I don't think it really has as much to do. I'm not saying it doesn't have an impact, but it's about parents also taking responsibility and giving a context to everything. You cannot leave your children unsupervised with this stuff. You can't let your children just go run off with whoever it is and live lives down the block. You got to know who your kids are around. You got to know what it is they're taking in. But if nothing else, like Nikki, you talk to your child and let them know, number one, you have expectations and what those expectations are, and that they are expected to meet those expectations, and that there are consequences if they don't. And there's way too many children where that's just not the case. And there's way too many parents where that's not the case. You got people in their 30s and 40s and 50s that are still trying to get their crap together.
You know what?
So
but here's
some point-
here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. I completely agree that parents need to be there with their children and they need to moderate what's going on. But you cannot tell me that exposing children to this kind of imagery doesn't have an effect. I don't care what you say to them as it's happening or after the fact. And if you don't believe that's the case, how do you
so many
explain?
parents aren't saying anything to them about it.
Okay, I agree.
So many parents just not saying anything.
But how
And
do
that's
you
the problem. If
explain?
you talk to your kids, you sit there and you go, this is fake. This is not real. There's a lot of kids that have a problem with that, what's real and what's fake. They don't have an understanding of what will happen in real life because their parents are not having that conversation with them.
And even
they're letting them watch the violent TV shows. They're letting them see the video games, and they're not saying, this is not real. This is what happens in real life, and what you're seeing is not real.
But even
they're
if
not
you were
going, you know what,
Well,
you're not going to watch that.
That would involve the parents actually talking to the children. And I don't think that really happens so much.
Even if you tell these children that it's not
It doesn't.
real, here's the thing: if you don't think exposing people to that kind of imagery, if you don't believe that has an effect, how do you explain all of the troops that came back from Vietnam and now suffer from this wonderful thing called PTSD? You know, and they even talk about it now with the school shootings. You know, all of the people that were there afterwards start talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, that they were affected by this one event for years and years. They need therapy for years afterward. But we constantly bombard our children with this stuff in the movies
I
and on
think there's
TV.
a difference between seeing someone actually die in front of you than seeing it on TV when
But
it's fake.
I don't
That's
think
what the
that
conversation is for.
a
You don't want to.
young mind can differentiate between the two the way an adult like you and I
That's why
can.
the parent has to sit there and say, "Look, here's the difference. You don't just sit a kid in front of Rambo and say, 'Let's go.' You don't."
And
that's
yet
not a
we know
thing.
that happens
And
all the
here's-
time.
Here's the other side of that, though, Joe. At some point, the parents have got to decide that they've got to give up their own recreation so that their kid can have an actual childhood.
Well, that's the way
But
our
too
folks
many
did it
parents
when we
wanna go
were
sit in
kids.
their room and watch, whatever shows they're watching, and just leave the kid completely unattended in front of the system in the front room. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah,
If
well,
the
I
TV's gonna
agree.
raise your kid, you're gonna get what they're giving you. And at some point,
But
people
like-
got to stand up and say, we don't want to see this garbage.
But
And too
like
many people
Nikki is
want to see
saying,
it.
that's not happening, and that's the problem.
I know. I remember
And
hearing.
it's not happening on multiple levels. It's not just even visual media. I work in a library. Parents come in and they go, "Is this appropriate for my kid?" They're not taking that responsibility to find out what they think is good for their kid and what's not.
Well, you're kind of a professional, right? You should be able to render an opinion about a book, right?
I can render an opinion on a book for what I think is good, but that's not going to say that what I think is the same thing as what you believe is good for your child.
Yeah, and I remember hearing the story about some movie theater chains just recently, like when that Joker movie came out, and they were having to put out a statement saying, "Hey, I know people, you think this is a superhero action movie, whatever, like Deadpool is rated R, but this Joker, this is a hard R. Do not bring your children to this." And I'm sure people are still not paying attention and not, they're still thinking, "Hey, I'm going to go take my kid and we're going to go see the new Batman movie."
Yeah, exactly. But
all right, so my son just saw Men in Black for the first time, and I winced every time the language got a little colorful because he's got to learn that stuff the same way I did on the playground. I can't have him thinking it's okay in the household. Because it's not okay, and he knows that. I know he goes to school and he'll get the flapping the jaws and saying some stuff I don't know, but he knows the second I step foot on that campus, it's going to be a different scene.
But here's this is going to sound really strange, and forgive me for saying this, because we all know what an unfortunate example Bill Cosby turned out to be as a human being.
America's Dad, Bill Cosby?
But he used to do a comedy routine about his life And, starting from when he was young and going all the way up to having his own family. And during that routine, there was a sequence where he talked about life with his father and how his father didn't want to curse in front of the children. So he would, in his words, his father ended up sounding like an idiot because his father would start a sentence and then censor himself and never complete a sentence. Well, in all honesty, I laughed very hard at that segment when I was young because I saw shades of my own father doing exactly the same thing. Now I walk in the street and like you were saying, Chevelle, I wince because I hear people talking not only in front of their children, but to their children and using this colorful language, as you call it. And I don't know what's happened to society where we somehow have made that acceptable.
I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make
is good for you mentally.
You think it's good for you?
No, there's science behind the benefits of swearing.
Well, again,
and that's one of the things I was going to say. I think that you can make a case for pretty much any scenario you want to. A kid should be able to be exposed to violence just as they should be exposed to. There's got to be a balance. But ultimately, I think the mistake that a lot of times is made, particularly when you start to ask for government to step in and regulate, or when you ask for some type of bureaucracy to fix the problem, is they treat every situation the same. And people are not the same. People are very different. So you can't apply the same tool over and over and over again. And more often than not, when you ask the government to do it, they're picking the wrong tool to begin with because they want one that's going to satisfy the contractors or their colleagues, or they can get a percentage when they go back into the private sector or something like that. And you end up with standardized testing, which is essentially ruined schools. Teachers can't teach people how to learn. They got to teach people how to memorize crap for this test now. So,
well, I want to go back and say something about the swearing thing. Yes, I can see how swearing could be therapeutic. You smash your finger with a hammer or in a door or something, and you want to let out a curse word. I can see how that would be therapeutic. That's not the same as you swearing at your little kid. That, again, what does that do to the child's psyche when they're we have a big adult?
You were being kind of general.
Okay, all right. Well, I will grant you that, but I think there's again in the right context, it's probably okay. But I wince because I have walked down the street here in this city where we are coming to you from tonight, and I have heard parents actually swearing at their children. And, I don't know when that became acceptable in society. It certainly was not acceptable and by no means the norm when I was a child.
Well, I'm sure it's been happening for a long time, but yeah, it's probably been more behind closed doors. But now that people are, saying, hey, you do you, now they're bringing it out in the sunshine.
Wow. That's a terrible reality that we are waking up to. And unfortunately, I think it speaks volumes about or toward what Chevelle echoed earlier, that we are probably looking at a continual increase in this kind of violence across the country.
Shame.
Well, Nikki, we really appreciate your call tonight. I hope you are enjoying the show. We really thank you for watching, and especially for calling in and sharing your opinions with us. And we hope you're going to continue to watch and maybe even call in again later.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great night.
Thanks, Nikki.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. You know what? I'm a quick check
They
at the
grow
clock
up
here.
so fast.
All I know is I'm going to go home and tell my wife a librarian noted a government study that said I can curse in front of you and the kids and everyone.
That's what you took away from this whole conversation, Tom.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Okay. Well, anyway, a quick check of the clock tells me it's time for us to be taking another break. And so I think we're gonna go ahead and do that and come back in a few minutes. But before I take this glorious break, I wanted to point out that the Malibu Film Foundation's films, charity events, and special programs continue to evolve in support of the arts in your community, and you can help. For more information, go to MalibuFilmFestival.org. That's MalibuFilmFestival.org. This is Around Midnight Somewhere with the local boys. I am Joe Carbonetta. I've got Todd Fluker with me, and Skyping in all the way from Colorado, Chevelle Devine. We've had a lot of callers this evening. If you want to join our conversation, give us a call. That telephone number is 951-356-6882. Again, that's 951-356-6882. If you are watching on Thursday, November 14, 2019, we are live, and you can give us a call. You can also join us on the YouTube chat, and you can always tweet us at Todd Fluker, at Chevelle Devine, and at Joe Carbonetta. Again, this is Pasadena Media. You're watching Around Midnight Somewhere. We'll be back right after this.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
The lost cause. The ignored.
The impossible.
Meet your match.
A Go-to-World Girl Scout identifies a big problem, creates a project, and takes the steps to solve that problem.
We stand out because we stand for more. Gold Award Girl Scouts don't just change the world for the better, we change it for good.
Vehicle accidents are stressful enough. You don't need someone showing up at the scene trying to pressure you into letting them tow away your vehicle. Call your roadside assistance provider or insurance company for towing company suggestions, or consult with police on the scene. And always have the price and terms in writing before you let them hook it up. If you suspect fraud, call us at 1-800-TEL-NICB or visit www.nicb.org. A public service message from the National Insurance Crime Bureau.
This is Around Midnight Somewhere, coming to you from the podcast studios of Pasadena Media in Pasadena, where you too can come down and make your own show, and it is cheap. Give them a call Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The telephone number is 626-794-8585, and they will tell you all about it. All right, we are still talking about the school shooting that took place in Santa Clarita. We got a telephone call while we were on the break. That was Kevin that was calling. And hey, Kevin, are you there with us?
I am.
All right, fantastic. Kevin, so what did you want to talk about here?
You know, I'm hearing everybody talk about just, various reasons they think this is happening. I'll be honest. I think the lion's share of it is cultural. And here's how I back that up. Okay, I'm in my 50s now, well into my 50s, which basically means I am the last generation of people to be raised without the internet and without powerful television. When I say powerful television, cable didn't show up until I was in my early 20s. I was well beyond my formative years.
Okay.
Here's what's happened, and I'm not like one of these people that's going after the media and all this kind of thing, but just as an observation. When I was a kid, you didn't see powerful young people on television. Like, I never saw anybody my age or anywhere near my age that was powerful. Like, the big iconic people that were on television at the time were were the kids. Like, for example, the Brady Bunch. And there was one episode of the Brady Bunch where Greg Brady wanted a car and he had to save up $500 and he bought this beater and it was raggedy. Well, fast forward to the future. Let's say that, I'm watching a hip hop video, right?
Okay.
And I'm an older guy. I roll my eyes at it. I see somebody's 20 years old and they're riding around, and there's all these girls and these lighting cigars for $50 bills. And then I have to stop myself. I go, okay, wait a minute. I look at this and I kind of chuckle, but what does this 20-year-old guy look like to a 15-year-old viewer? So here's what's happening. One man's opinion. The generations for some time now, lust for power. When I was a kid, and I've had this conversation with all my friends that are my age, none of us expected to be rich or famous or powerful. We all knew at 17, 18 years old, we're going to have to get out and work and eat crap for a while. We knew that we were going to be nothing special, you know, and if we were lucky, we're going to work. I'm not saying we didn't believe we were going to be anything special. We knew that we were going to be nothing special. It's fast forward the future. Now we have people that are billionaires in their mid 20s. Okay, there's not a lot of them, but there's a few. And of course, the American dream, which I support, by the way, where we tell people that you can be anything you want. But Joe, you said something really very significant earlier when you said, in order for someone to win, someone's got to lose. People don't know that they're going to be the loser. And when you're young, I don't think you're really balanced in the way you look at things. You think that you're special. You think that you're going to be this thing. And I think sometimes people realize, wait a minute, I'm not going to be the next Justin Timberlake. I'm not going to be the next whoever or whatever. And it becomes this weird thing to wrap your head around. And most people can't handle it because throughout their entire childhood, they had no coping skills. I think it's bigger than the parents, because as a parent, I think there's a lot of things you can do. But once your kids get to junior high, high school, you're talking 7, 8 hours a day where your kids are around people that you don't know and in situations that you don't control.
Yeah,
Our
that's
culture has drastically shifted.
That's totally true. And yet you and I and everyone else on this panel tonight, we all went through the exact same situation. We all, left our parents. We all went to school.
I don't know about that.
Well,
I don't know about that.
What is different?
I think there is and I know this isn't the correct term, but I'm going to use it in this case anyway. There's that digital divide.
Okay.
A cultural divide. And it's similar to, I was listening to a couple of hip hop artists, and they were talking about how you had the world before hip hop and the world after hip hop, because there is not a single genre of music on the planet today that has not been touched by hip hop, not a single nation on the country. And there was a time before hip hop, and it was very different. It was musical, it was R&B, it was all about Motown, and later on into, all that other stuff. Hip hop changed a lot, and it got co-opted and taken off into a different place. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. When you talk about how we went through it all, we didn't go through the same thing. I didn't have 50 channels coming up pumping me with shows where the children were the heroes. There is not a single show on the Disney Channel that has an adult that is competent. So they don't have any role models to look up to. And when you're not around your parents all day long and you're being pumped full of this other stuff where you as a child are smarter than everybody else in the room, you have no desire to listen to an adult because you haven't had to. And the adults that you do get exposed to are often pumping you full of the same stuff we've been talking about, where you're a winner and you can do whatever you want.
But you do realize that what you are basically saying is that the media is largely responsible for creating this monster that is evolving into these senseless acts of violence because people aren't satisfied with the way things are going for themselves.
It's media. I think media is a piece of culture. It's a culture thing, because it's not only part of it is our generation was one of the first generations once cable came in when we were young, and I never had it, and I think I am better off for it, because I know when I got it, I didn't want to leave the house. But when you're sitting there in front of the TV, and it all evolved, but the way that they go after children now it's very calculated. There is not a single show that I can think of, or a single movie I can think of, where you've got a protagonist hero beneath the age of, say, 25 that is being targeted for children. When we were coming up, 18 was it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I wouldn't argue with you.
You don't have an 18 today. And if you did, they'd all be 19, 20, 21 years old. Oh. These dudes were Vietnam vets. They'd been through life. They'd been through a war, and they came back and they had some stories to tell, and they wanted to do right because they'd seen wrong. You don't have that with today's culture.
All right. Well, hey, Kevin, did you get a chance to say, to make all the points that you were hoping to
expound?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And CJ, I think you nailed it. It was a very different time. When you have a generation of children that don't lust for power, it's a very different world. Kids now, and this is not me attacking kids lust for power, not just money, not just fame, power.
Power. Yeah, I see that with my own son.
I mean,
And
that
it's a
is a
battle.
significant thing. I mean, we weren't like that, all of us. And it's kind of interesting because I run into my old, every now and then I go back to, in town I grew up in, and I'll run it. It's a small area, so I'll run into people. Once I ran into one of my old coaches from high school, and I've had a number of coaches tell me, "You were the last great generation." I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "We could discipline you guys. We could tell you what to do, and you would listen." He said, "Even the toughest, biggest of you, we could say, 'Hey, take a lap, give me 10.' You would frown and you would do it." Now, not only will the kids not do it, the school system can't stand behind it because the parents are like, "Hey, wait a minute, you can't tell my kids what to do." And if you look at the way we do it, what do we look at the way we try to find solutions for this? What do? Hey, the government's got to come in and change gun laws. Now, I'm not saying I'm for or against gun laws, but the problem is no one says, "Hey, we got to change the way our society thinks." We don't do that. We're like, no. Big Daddy government has got to make a law, and that's going to fix it.
Yeah.
No, the problem starts in the home. And in this case, when I say the home, I mean within our culture. We are, as a culture, I'm not going to say getting lost or going astray. Maybe it's growing pains of powerful media and internet. And maybe this is the psychedelic, maybe the internet is a psychedelic 60s thing of our time. But we do have to address it because it's the shift in culture.
Sometimes I think
it is getting a little out of control.
I think that's a problem of our own creation in a way, in that the media is focused on almost entirely on the youth culture and being young, and we are always trying to get that target demographic of the young people, and they why should they listen to an adult if they're being told that they don't have to? Anybody older than 30 is practically dead.
Well, and then adults are being told they don't have to be adults. That's a pretty sad fact.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I think that there certainly are multiple issues that have to be addressed here before we can perhaps begin to get a handle on this. Kevin, I want to say thank you so much for your call. I want to try and open up the phone lines in case we get another call coming through tonight, but we really do appreciate you calling.
Absolutely.
And thank you for watching the show, and we hope you're going to keep on watching. And you have a great evening, okay?
Hey, you too. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kev.
Bye-bye. All right, we've been talking about all of the media and things that have happened.
I was just thinking, like, I know you probably had some run-ins with that kind of youth culture here at your work, Joe, like where you get some young people coming in here and they don't want to be taught anything. They don't want to be, listen to somebody. They have their way of doing whatever it is they're doing. And even an older person is trying to teach them something. Like you said, coaches are trying to teach someone something.
Yeah.
But they're not trying to hear it.
We got another telephone call. Hey, you have reached Around Midnight Somewhere with the Local Boys. I am Joe Carbonetta. You are live on the air. Who are we talking to this evening?
Tracy.
Hi, Tracy. How are you doing again?
Good. I had a couple of comments about what Chevelle was saying earlier about lowering the bar. About every 10 years, they do a study comparing SAT scores with GPAs. And what they've been finding over the past 20 years is that GPAs have been going up and up and up. But the
Whoops, Tracy, we lost you. You dropped out.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you now. We heard about the GPAs going up, and then you disappeared.
Oh, okay. So GPAs have been going up, and the SAT scores, which is adjusted yearly, has actually not changed for about 30 years. So the idea that our kids are getting smarter because GPAs is going up is actually incorrect. They're not getting any smarter. Their SAT scores haven't changed. So going back to the whole lowering the bar,
I was actually having that conversation with my son earlier today.
Huge grade inflation. And I know so many people in public and private institutions at all levels who are being told to stop giving F's, stop failing so many kids. I have a friend who recently retired. He's been a professor for 27 years. He retired because he was sick of being pulled into the dean's office and the dean telling him, stop failing so many kids. And he said, well, I teach an advanced building engineer class, and if the kids can't pass my structural engineering class, they shouldn't be civil engineers. They should not be putting their stamp on buildings saying they can withstand earthquakes if they can't pass my test.
But
You know what? I completely agree with him.
I couldn't agree with you
do not
more.
want-
This sounds like another situation where everybody gets a gold star.
Right. But they shouldn't be getting a gold star, because when you have that seal, when you're an architect, when you're a structural engineer, when you have those seals and you're saying, yes, this is structurally sound, it's your butt on the chopping block. But we're
When
not
you're a
holding
police
them up to the
officer
same
or
expectation.
when you're a fireman and there's lives on the line, you want somebody who knows what they're doing.
All right. Well, Tracy,
Correct.
I hate to rush you through, but we're kind of short on time. So I wanted to thank you very much for your telephone call this evening, and I hope you'll keep watching the show. And by all means, call back next week also, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. You have a good night. All right. I hate to have to chase the caller away.
She brought that up because I literally had that conversation with my son earlier today, and it gets back to how they're so hell-bent on pushing people past whatever grade level they're in, because that's money in the bank for the schools. The fact that they have turned public education into a system of just getting people to the next level versus actually teaching them stuff. It's a tragedy. He thinks, well, I got a passing grade, and I'm like, that's not good enough.
All right, here's
That doesn't
something
mean
I
you-
wanted to
so.
say. I've been talking about media and how I really firmly believe that we are programming generations to resort to this kind of violence. When I was a kid, we had a completely different kind of television that we could rely on for education, one of which was a wonderful guy by the name of Mr. Rogers. And there's a movie that's coming out within this month, which is entitled A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and it's basically about Mr. Rogers and the show that he did, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I had hoped that we were going to get into a whole discussion about that, but this conversation about the school shooting took on a life of its own. I find it interesting that these movies are coming out now, because I really do feel like it's an inner cry that we are all beginning to realize that we have lost our way. Things are spiraling out of control, and we want to go back to when it was more wholesome, more pure. And to that end, Mr. Rogers, as it turns out, believed as strongly as I do that the media can have a profound effect on young minds. And to that end, we actually have a roll-in that I was hoping we could run right here. So, Todd, if you go ahead and cue that up, I'm going to leave you with this before we get ready to get on out of here.
And I'm proud to present Mr. Rogers to you now.
All right, Rogers, you got the floor.
Senator Pastore, this is a philosophical statement and would take about 10 minutes to read, so I'll not do that. One of the first things that a child learns in a healthy family is trust, and I trust what you have said, that you will read this. It's very important to me. I care deeply about children. My first children...
Will it make you happy if you read it?
I'd just like to talk about it, if it's all right.
Sir. Okay.
My first children's program was on WQED 15 years ago, and its budget was $30. Now, with the help of the Sears Roebuck Foundation and National Educational Television, as well as all of the affiliated stations, each station pays to show our program. It's a unique kind of funding in educational television. With this help, now our program has a budget of $6,000. It may sound like quite a difference, but $6,000 pays for less than 2 minutes of cartoons, 2 minutes of animated, what I sometimes say, bombardment. I'm very much concerned, as I know you are, about what's being delivered to our children in this country. And I've worked in the field of child development for 6 years now, trying to understand the inner needs of children. We deal with such things as the inner drama of childhood. We don't have to bop somebody over the head to make him, to make drama on the screen. we deal with such things as getting a haircut, or the feelings about brothers and sisters, and the kind of anger that arises in simple family situations. And we speak to it constructively.
How long a program is it?
It's a half hour every day. Most channels schedule it in the noontime as well as in the evening. WETA here has scheduled it in the late afternoon.
Could we get a copy of this so that we can see it? Maybe not today, but I'd like to see the program.
I'd like very much for you
I'd like to see the program itself, or any one of them, you see.
We made 100 programs for EEN, the Eastern Educational Network, and then when the money ran out, people in Boston and Pittsburgh and Chicago all came to the fore and said, we've got to have more of this neighborhood expression of care. And this is what I give. I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him realize that he is unique. I end the program by saying, you've made this day a special day by just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. And I feel that if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service for mental health. I think that it's much more dramatic that two men could be working out their feelings of anger, much more dramatic than showing something of gunfire. I'm constantly concerned about what our children are seeing. And for 15 years, I have tried in this country and Canada to present what I feel is a meaningful expression of care.
Do you narrate it?
I'm the host, yes. And I do all the puppets, and I write all the music, and I write all the scripts.
Well, I'm supposed to be a pretty tough guy, and this is the first time I've had goosebumps for the last 2 days.
Well, I'm grateful, not only for your goosebumps, but for your interest in our kind of communication. Could I tell you the words of one of the songs which I feel is very important?
Yes.
This has to do with that good feeling of control, which I feel that children need to know is there. And it starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. I work with children, doing puppets in very personal communication with small groups. What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad you could bite. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, stop, stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a lady, and a boy can be someday a man.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
Okay, so what you have been watching there was Mr. Rogers actually, before testifying before the House about reductions that were proposed for public television and the importance of quality educational programming that isn't violent. for children. Unfortunately, it's time for us to get out of here right now. This has been another exciting episode of Around Midnight, produced through the facilities of Pasadena Media. The Around Midnight Somewhere is a Mixified Media Solutions production. For the entire gang, I am Joe Carbonetta. We'll see you next week.